explanation.
So here's the
for
tough
original
question.
universe.
Because I've had family members who've renounced their faith over the Holocaust, for example. Right? How could a fair, just God allow that to happen? When you look at what's happened in Israel and then Gaza in the last 6 months, a lot of people might question, well, why would a God that has the universal creative superpower of the kind that you believe God had to create all this, why would they allow such misery and hell to also exist on
tragic
in this?
mess.
Greetings and welcome. Doing this video at 3 a.m. in the morning, I want to react to Piers Morgan's release of Can This Man Prove That God Exists? There are 3 questions that were asked during this video that I want to answer.
If you actually start from where Darwin's theory begins, the creation of the human being was so complicated. The body scientific hypotheses that don't use God as an explanation for all this. One is the simulation matrix theory, which Elon Musk talks about, or the idea of a multiverse. And when I had Neil deGrasse Tyson on, the astrophysicist, he said this: what was there before the beginning of the universe? Everyone asks this question. What's the simple answer?
Oh, I'm delighted I can respond to you. We don't know. But we got top people working on it. Okay.
All right, so the question is, what was there before the universe existed? So let me help to answer this question. And I'm going to help to answer this question with Bible. And we're going to go to what everybody's used to, the 66 books of the Bible. We're going to go to Genesis 1. And we can break this down from Genesis 1. And it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. If you understand the writing of God and the understanding of Bible, it tends to start with a summary in these type of cases. So it starts with a summary to let you know that it's God that created the heaven and the earth. So that's what he did overall. Towards the end of this chapter, it gives you the details of how he did it. But it starts off by letting you know what he did. So say, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved up on the face of the waters. So he's asked the question, what existed before the universe existed? So the first thing that existed from the very beginning is God himself. But I know the question is not asking in relation to God. God existed from the beginning. God was not created. God existed from the very beginning. So, what existed before God created the heaven and the earth? And it is here. He says it. The earth was without form and void. What does void mean? So he's saying he does not know. But the real answer is nothing. Nothing existed before God created everything. But what is really nothing? Nothing really represents darkness. So before God created anything, the thing that existed was darkness. Nothing means darkness. There was nothing there. So if you read through this entire chapter, you will not see where it says that God created darkness. If you go through the 66 books of this Bible, you will never see where it says God created darkness. But yet it says God created all things. If you go through the book of Enoch, which I know most of you have not gone through as yet, are not exposed to, none of these books lets you know that God created darkness. So God did not need to create darkness, because darkness represents nothing. So that's what existed before God decided that he was going to make angels, before God decided that he was going to make the earth, before God decided that he was going to make water. So this said that God moved on the face of the waters. This does not say as well that God made water. We are going to assume that God, with the Bible saying that he made all things, that he made water. But the two elements that existed before everything else was created, before we have stars, before we have the sun, before we have the moon, before we have the firmament, before we have the earth, darkness existed, and darkness represents void. It represents nothing. And water existed. So the first two elements that existed before we see anything else that exists in the universe is darkness and water.
You know what?
There may have been a multiverse.
I like that. I like the honesty. So we genuinely don't know.
So he makes reference to there might have been a multiverse. There is no multiverse. There is no multiverse. There is no multiverse. What you see is what you get. If we go back to the book of Genesis 1, it tells you all that was created. So the first thing that God said, let there be light. And there was light. God creates by his word. God creates by speaking. So there was darkness and God created light, right? And God saw that the light was good and God divided the light from the darkness. Genesis is really just at this point just giving us a summary, because there are means to which how God created light. He created the sun, he created the moon, this is the lesser light, he created the stars. Right? So, and God called the light day, and darkness he called the night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. So that blue thing that we see above is the firmament, and the blue thing behind it is actually the color of water. There is the firmament, there is light, there is darkness, there is the sun, the moon, the stars. There is the water that we can see on earth, and the dry land is called earth. There's earth, there is the middle heaven, which is, you see the clouds, we see the sky, which is really the firmament with the water behind it. We see the stars at night, we see the moon at night, with the sun early in the morning rising from the east, setting on the west. What we don't see is where God is. And that is called the third heaven, and that is the heaven of heavens. That we cannot see from earth, from where we are. God has to reveal that to us, and that is not revealed to us. Right? So if there was any multiverse, it is really where God is, where God lives, where God's house is, where the angels are. That's the third part that we cannot see with our naked eyes from here. Out there, other than the heaven and the earth, there are void places, there are dark places. There are dark places where spirits are held and so forth. But there is nothing else except what we see. So all this talk of other planets and other suns and other moons, that may not be true, because this that we read here has never made reference to no other sun. God created one sun that is light to the heavens and to the earth. He creates one moon that receives its light from the sun, that is light to heaven and earth, the stars. There is no multiverse. There's the heavens and there is the earth. What makes up the heavens? What makes up the earth, which is the dry land? There is no multiverse.
We just don't know, right?
We don't know. There might have been a multiverse that's birthing universes, and we're one of them, but that just pushes the question one step further before that. What was around before the multiverse? So we just don't know. It's a frontier question.
These are the type of people that the Bible talks about. Those type of people that think they see, but yet they are blind. They are so full of information without checking back the knowledge that God has given us, which is the Bible. The the different books of the Bible that exist, and not just the 66 books of the Bible. All the scriptures that are out there, all the books that are out there that were found in Israel, in the caves. All of these, the Dead Sea Scrolls that were translated from Hebrew and Aramaic to the different languages, to English. This is knowledge. But these men are trying to invent their own knowledge. The world that we live in is so modified and full of false doctrines. And that's what we're facing today. So these people, they come across as being full of knowledge, but the truth be told, they are blind because they're trying to lean on their own understanding.
Right now.
What is your response? I mean, a lot of astrophysicists and Elon Musk and others think it's actually about the multiverse. For those who don't know, what is the multiverse? And what's your response to that?
Sure. The multiverse is the idea that, yes, the universe is incredibly finely tuned against all odds to make life possible. But the explanation for that is not that there was a cosmic fine-tuner, an intelligence who set the universe up.
So let me give you a background to this video, since I am joining from the middle. So Piers Morgan is having this conversation with this man. It's proven if God exists. This is a man that is well studied in the science. And he actually believes in God. And he's answering these questions to prove that a lot of those scientific theories out there are not necessarily true, that God definitely exists. So he's actually trying to prove that God exists. So let's listen to him a little bit and react to him a little bit before we move to the other questions.
But rather that there's a billion or gabillions of other universes out there that have different combinations of these different settings of these different parameters, and that ours just happens to be the lucky one. And the reason that we have life in our universe is not that it was designed for life, but rather there was a kind of giant cosmic lottery that is responsible, and that life must have arisen somewhere. And again, we just happen to be in the lucky universe. Oh, and my response.
Yes.
Yes, right. Well, the multiverse hypothesis is specifically relevant to explaining this fine-tuning. But there's a problem with it, and that is that if you have all these other universes out there, the very existence of these other universes does not explain the fine-tuning in our universe. And here's why. If those other universes are separate from our own, then there's no causal connection between them. So whatever happens in those other universes has no effect on our universe, including it has no effect on whatever process was responsible for setting the fine-tuning. So in virtue of that, multiverse proponents have had to propose a kind of common cause of all the universes, a universe generating machine of some kind that could allow them to portray our universe as the lucky winner of a giant cosmic lottery. And that's where the rub comes in.
But is that possible?
Well, yeah, there's a problem with it. And that is that all of the different universe generating mechanisms that have been proposed, some based on something called string theory, others based on something called inflationary cosmology, themselves require prior fine-tuning in the universe-generating mechanisms. And so you explore...
All right, so in other words, he's going to make the point that he does not necessarily believe in the whole concept of the multiverse, because in order for the multiverse to really function, it would need some sort of fine-tuning, and it still would mean that there need to be something in place that manages all of these and perfects all of these. So there would have to be a God. But the reality is there's no multiverse. So I'm going to skip to minute 25, where Piers Morgan mentions something about the Holocaust.
So here's the tough question. Because I've had family members who've renounced their faith over the Holocaust, for example. Right? How could a fair, just God allow that to happen? When you look at what's happened in Israel and then Gaza in the last 6 months, a lot of people might question, well, why would a God that has the universal creative superpower of the kind that you believe God had to create all this, why would they allow such misery and hell to also exist in this life?
So the question is, why would God allow the Holocaust to happen? And if you know what the Holocaust is, it's where in World War the Jews would have been intentionally targeted by Hitler, and millions of Jews would have died. And if you know the history of Jews are really Israelites, And Jews in the Bible were God's chosen people from the beginning. God chose a specific set of people that he would expose himself to and call his own people. But the reality is God had chosen these people to operate among these people that will allow the world to really see who he is as God. God chose a set of people that at some point they were with him as God, and at some point they were worshiping gods that were made with their own hands. And as the generations progressed, they would have turned away from God and turned back to God. They would have cried out to God, and God would send someone to rescue them that the Spirit of God was with. These set of people got the opportunity to know God firsthand. God was with these people as his chosen people, as if he literally did not choose the other nations that existed in the world. And for some reason, he chose this specific set of people and called his chosen people. So they got the opportunity, a first-hand relationship with God. God gave them constitution, God gave them laws, commandments that they were supposed to abide by. So he also gave them warnings that if they do not turn to him and turn from the idol worshiping, that punishment will come upon them. So, question that Piers Morgan is asking, why would God allow such a thing to happen to the children of Israel? That Holocaust that the Israelites went through is just a series of prophecies of things that were prophesied that they would eventually go through after God decided that I am tired of always running behind you and you always turning from me, turning to other gods. It was like the point of God saying enough was enough. And it started from God moving them out of their own land that he had given them and threw them over to first the Babylonians, who were now in charge of them. So though they didn't have their own kings over them, no, they were under the kingship of other people from other nations. And to this day, it has basically continued, because Israel is really not even under their own kingship now. Right now, United States is really the nation that is really over Israel. So until this day, Israel is not under their own kingship or their own leadership. Even though they have a prime minister, they really fall under USA. They were cast to Babylon, and during that time, a lot of Israelites were killed under the Babylonians. Then they were under the kingship of the Persians. A lot of them would have lost their lives in that time. Then they were under the kingship of the Romans, and especially during this time. So under Babylon, the first temple would have been destroyed. A lot of them would have lost their lives at that time. Under the Romans, they would have come back during the time of the Persians to rebuild the temple, and it would have been destroyed again in the time of the Romans. A lot of Israelites, a lot of Jews would have lost their life in this time. So it started off with prophecy from prophets that were put forth before them to tell them what was going to happen. So they were even told what was going to happen before it even happened. Isaiah told them what was going to happen before it even happened. So it was not new information. They were actually told that they were going to be cast into Babylon before they actually ended up in Babylon. So it was not new. So then another prophet came, who is Jesus Christ, which is Lord Jesus. He too also gave prophecy unto his apostles when they asked him about this temple. And he told them that not one of these stones will be left on the other. That was a prophecy that was not actually fulfilled in the 66 books of the Bible. That is a prophecy that actually happened 70 years after Jesus left the earth. That is not written in scriptures, but what we have today is the evidence of it, is that that prophecy from in most part was fulfilled. The Romans destroyed the second temple. That is not written in the scriptures. And Jesus had prophesied the start of birth pains that were supposed to happen. He also told him that when they see certain signs happening, then they are supposed to flee to the mountains and go to all parts of the world, which resulted in the scattering of the Israelites. All these are things that were prophesied. So the question is, why would God allow such a thing to happen? All of this that happened to the Israelites happened as part of God now turning away from the Israelites and the fulfilling of prophecy, where they are being scattered all over the world, where they are under the kingship of other nations, is the fulfillment of prophecy against a set of people that was chosen by God, who turned away from God, end up in a form of curse, where God was no longer with them as he was at the start of choosing them, and they end up in this situation. So why God allows it? God allows it because it's prophecy that is being fulfilled against a set of people that turned against a God who got first-hand chosen by this God. It's not like us, we call Gentiles, who did not get that first-hand choosing of God. This set of people got first-hand choosing of God, disobeyed his commandments, turned away from him, and most of what the Israelites goes through today is because they turned away from God. So why would God allow such a thing? He's allowing it because this set of people turned away from him. It is so unfortunate that they would have gone through what they have gone through in the Holocaust. But what we're seeing there is just the fulfillment of prophecy. I'm going to bring up the verses where Jesus makes this prophecy. That was the fulfillment of one prophecy. And this is the type of prophecy. It's a parable type of prophecy. It means that it recurs over time. So the Israelites would have gone through over and over again different situations where in Babylon they are going through much stress. Much people are killed during that time. They face it in the Persians, they face it in the Romans, then they faced it in our time after Bible time under the Germans, and to this day they still face certain things. But God has a plan to restore Israel eventually. After judgment, God has a plan to restore Israel eventually. God is allowing this because of who we are as people. We are a disobedient people. He opens up himself unto us, and we disobey him and turn away from him. And when he turns away from us and leaves us to the hands of evil men, then anything is possible. And unfortunately, the Jews, the Israelites, experienced this under the Holocaust. It's just the fulfillment of prophecy, because God prophesied that he's going to leave them to their reprobate mind. He's going to leave them to the hands of other kings. He is not with them for a time. Jesus prophesied what was going to happen, and they ended up in the situation that they're in. So this is not new. This is something that was actually prophesied. When they see these things, they are supposed to run. Fortunately, now they are in the process where they reacquired the land of Israel. Good for them. But it came with the killing of a lot of Israelites, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Kind you just
Have you thought about
that? Well, of course. There's a traditional theistic answer, goes back to St. Augustine and maybe earlier. The idea of sometimes called the free will defense if you're in an argument about the so-called problem of evil. I actually find it persuasive and compelling. And it's the idea that God created us as free moral agents, and understood in creating us that way that he was taking a risk, that we could use our agency for good or for ill. We could use it to love him and to love the other creatures he's made, or we could use it to aggrandize ourselves. And we have instances of both on this planet. And the people will say, well, why would God do that? Well, I think the answer is that God understood that creating agents with free will opened the possibility of evil, but it also opened the possibility of genuine love.
So, and that's the problem with these men. So he has good intention because he's trying to prove that God exists. And I guess one of the methods to try to prove that God exists is to not use the Bible, because most of the people that does not believe in God does not believe in the Bible either. But to not believe in the Bible is to not to believe in the foundation of life. It's not to believe in the knowledge that God gave us for us to use to answer these questions. So, frankly, you don't necessarily argue with people that does not believe in God, that does not believe in the Bible, because these are people whose eyes are full, who are basically blind, that most times will not just come to the truth just like that. But the truth, to answer these type of questions, you need some foundational knowledge. We cannot answer these questions based on our own feelings and based on what we think it is. And yes, he's right, that from the beginning we were created with the ability to choose. We were created with free will. You cannot answer these questions without the knowledge that God has already given us. And that's in the scriptures, that's in the Bible. Let me jump to 29, where something else is said that I want to answer.
Final question. What's the meaning of life?
Well, I think it ultimately is to come into a relationship with the Creator who made the universe. In the closing chapter of my book, I talk about Viktor Frankl and the man's search for meaning and how universal that is. And that nothing can mean anything to a rock or to an atom or to a planet. Things only mean things to persons. So if there is to be meaning in life, there must be genuine persons to whom we can mean something and whom can mean something to us. And yet we all die. And so I think if there is a God, it reopens that question of ultimate meaning. The French existentialists used to say of Sartre, without an infinite reference point, nothing finite has any lasting or enduring meaning.
Right.
But if there is an infinite reference point, and that infinite reference point is personal, that is to say, if the universe was created by a personal agent who wants to know us, then the possibility of enduring meaning is again on the table.
Yeah. I mean,
so, good answer. The meaning of life is really to try to have a personal relationship with God. And we were all created with one essential purpose. And it is revealed when Solomon says that the whole duty of man is to fear God and to keep his commandments. That's our main purpose in life. Our main purpose in life is to fear God and keep his commandments. Is really to worship God in spirit and in truth. That's the whole meaning of life. It is appointed unto man once to die, then comes the judgment. To live life knowing that there's going to be a judgment for us all, with the aim to try to inherit the kingdom of heaven. It's supposed to live life according to the commandments of God, with the aim that we are going to inherit something that he has prepared for us as a reward, and that is to inherit the kingdom of heaven. That's the whole meaning of life. The whole meaning of life is to fear God and keep his commandments, and hope that we inherit the reward that he has for us in the end, which is to inherit the kingdom of heaven. God's intention for us at the beginning was for us to prosper, was for us to live forever, live for eternity in the Garden of Eden, to live in paradise, to live life to the fullness without having to be fed by the sweat of our brow. That was God's intention for us, but he made us with the ability to choose, and we ended up in influence choosing evil, and as a result we end up in a situation right now where we have to re-earn the ability to get that which he intended for us, which is to live a prosperous life in the kingdom of heaven. So now we have to earn it through following his commandments, living according to his will, choosing that which is good and righteous in order to inherit what he really intends for us. And that's really the meaning of life. So that's answering these questions in a nutshell. If you are watching this channel for the first time or not, I recommend that you hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so that you can be notified when I release these life-changing videos. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.